Hi, I'm Dr. Tracey Marks, and I make mental health education videos. Subscribe if you don't want to miss one. Today, I'm talking about what makes you get angry and how that can look. No one is without anger, but not all anger is loud and explosive. Sometimes it's disguised as other emotions. And what makes you get angry and how you express it depends on your temperament and your upbringing. Temperament refers to your inborn way of behaving, and there are different psychological models for how we define temperament, and I'm not going to talk about any of those. Instead, I'm going to give you my own thoughts about what I think contributes to how high or low is your anger threshold. And this is not scientifically validated, it's just my thoughts based on psychoanalytic theory. There are some basic characteristics that play into how slow or quick you are to be pushed to anger. And three of these factors are how flexible you are in your thinking, or formally called cognitive flexibility, how you react to change, which is related to that flexibility and more of a behavior than a way of thinking, and what is your default view of the world? Is it a safe place that only becomes unsafe if something extraordinary happens? Or is it mostly unsafe, requiring a lot of vigilance on your part to keep it safe? These basic factors form an overall posture or attitude that affect your level of uneasiness. So for example, let's look at two ends of the spectrum, and to make this easy for me, I'm going to say he. I'm not picking on the men, this affects women as well. On one side of the spectrum, you have the aloof posture, and aloof means having a certain level of emotional disengagement. This person is extremely flexible with accepting whatever comes his way, and in fact may not have much of a will of his own. He adjusts his desires to meet the situation, and he has very few expectations. And he's willing to change if something turns out to be different from what he wanted. And lastly, he takes for granted that the world is a safe place and people have good intentions, unless something extraordinary comes along to force that individual to do something of ill will. Now, this posture may look desirable. Who wouldn't want to be so laid back that everything rolls off your chest? But the dark side of this extreme is that this person can be so disengaged that they seem completely uninvested. They make you want to say, "Do you even care?" If we look at the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the rigid posture. This person is extremely inflexible in his thinking. He has a strong sense of what's right and what's wrong, and there's very little gray. Once he makes up his mind about something, he does not want to change or even be expected to change. He can become indignant at the thought that you would even ask such a thing. And he takes a stand on general principle. And then he operates on the premise that the world is unsafe and people by default will take advantage of you unless you put active measures in place to protect yourself. So you always need to be watching your back. This is the person who seems way too invested in things, and they make you want to say, "Hey, just relax, it's not that important." But it is important to them because of their rigid thinking. And it's easy to look at this person and think, "No way, I don't want to be like that." But the upside of this extreme is this person is engaged and they're passionate about what they're engaged in. So can you see how on the one hand you have the rigid person with an anger gauge that easily rises because they get mad about everything, contrasted with the aloof person who you need to shake and say, "Were you even awake while that was happening?" These are what the extremes can look like, but most people aren't extreme and fit somewhere in between. Where you fall on this spectrum affects how quick you are to anger and how intensely angry you become. But another important contributor to how you express your anger is what your environment was like when you were growing up. Were you in a household where people freely yelled when they were angry? Was yelling something that frightened you? Were you allowed to express your anger freely? Were you told or was it implied that you were being difficult when you got upset? If you were free to express your anger, you may express it more actively, and we pretty much know what active anger can look like: yelling, hitting, throwing things, insulting, criticizing, making threats. But if you were raised in a way to feel that anger was something to avoid, either because you were afraid of it or you were taught not to express it, you can express your anger more passively. Passive ways to express anger are overeating, self-harm like cutting yourself or pulling out your hair, making snide comments, being late, withholding affection, and forgetting things. It's one thing to address blow-ups with anger management, but passive anger can be destructive as well, not only to yourself, but in relationships. Just because the person with the rigid posture can get angry fast and often, it doesn't mean he expresses it with yelling. He can seethe with anger and express it by withholding affection or giving you the silent treatment. So passive anger can do more damage to poison a relationship than dealing with the person who hits walls. I'll do a follow-up video on managing anger, but I wanted first to introduce you to how you get angry and what that anger can look like. And some of the factors that I discussed here about flexibility in your thinking are used to address and manage your anger. So that's why I wanted to introduce you to these concepts. So stay tuned for more. See you next time.